Roots of the Science podcast with your girl, Anne with an E.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Root of the Science podcast with your girl, Anne with an E. It's always such a pleasure to have new listeners onto the show. So if that is you, thank you so much for finding me. I hope you do stay and you become a major fan of the show. A big thank you to all of you who are returned, who are fans of the show, who are eager when you get those notifications. Now, if you do not get those notifications, let me tell you how you can do that. You can listen to this podcast on all your favorite podcast streaming platforms such as your Apple, Spotify, Google, and remember to click on notify me so that when a new episode lands, you get told. You can do the same thing on YouTube at searching the Root of the Science podcast. The same handle, you can find us on LinkedIn and on Facebook, the Root of the Science podcast. And you can also follow on TikTok, you can follow on Instagram, you can follow on Twitter using at Root of the Science podcast. Always remember that you can also DM me if you think I should chat to someone, or if you want to be on the show, or if you want to collaborate. You know, you can DM me directly on my various platforms, or you can send an email at the Root of the Science pod at gmail.com, and I will see it to get back to you. Let's get into today's episode. My guest for this episode is Nkosi Sithole, born and bred in South Africa, particularly KwaZulu-Natal. She's a master's student in environment and sustainable education. Now, when we recorded this episode, it was a hot day. However, we we managed through the heat, and so we chatted about the New Year resolutions, as she was my first recording of the year, speaking about her resolutions, as well as the importance of education as a key to many doors, and her parents being prime examples of that. And because she's really passionate about education, Nkosi started an NPO called ReEnvisage, and she talks us more about what she intends to do with this non-profit organization. Currently, she is a master's student in environment and sustainable education, and her research focuses on upscaling community-based water quality management in South Africa through social learning. Nkosi tells us all about this research and its importance, so tune in to hear about all of this and, of course, so much more. Let's go. Hi, Nkosi. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Anne, thank you so much for welcoming me.
It's such a pleasure to have you on this hot day.
Boiling.
My gosh.
Boiling.
Yeah. So like, I like the disclaimer that you said when we're speaking off air, that if you sound a bit low, it's because of the heat. So to the listeners, we are not bored of being here. It is just so hot.
Yeah.
It is so hot. All right.
Yeah.
Apart from the heat, let's get things started. So give us a brief intro. Who is Nkosi? Where are you currently based? And just briefly, what do you do?
Thank you, Anne. So my name is Nkosi Sithole, and I'm from a small town called Imandeni in KZN, but I was born in Teleni, so yeah, but there's a backstory there that I won't go into. And I'm basically 27-year-old female young lady who comes from a very close-knit family, very supportive parents, and family from humble beginnings. So I'm currently working as a research assistant at Ground Truth. And I know Anne is still going to touch on the educational background, so I won't go into that.
Okay.
So I'm working there now. And then before that, I was working as a environmental / project manager at a non-profit organization called DACT in Pietermaritzburg. So currently I'm based in Pietermaritzburg, and I work in Hilton, which is a few kilometers away from Pietermaritzburg. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, so like you said, I'm going to touch on to everything that you do work-wise, education-wise, etc. But you are the first recording of this year, and we're still in that, yay, 2023. Yes. We still have that energy, excitement, the new year, new me.
But we're not saying Happy New Year.
No, we're not saying that. We've passed the, what do you call that? Like the threshold or the time that's just gone. But I wanted to ask you, I think we can still ask about resolutions. Are you a person who believes in resolutions? And just if you don't mind sharing some of your resolutions for the year, if you do have any.
I think as I've grown older, and because I used to create these vision boards and literally put things that are based on what I want to achieve, but more so on based on my ambition. And I think as I've grown older, I don't even know what to call it, because I just had my birthday and I've reflected, the idea of new year, new me has taken a different meaning. And I look at, because I'm a Christian, so it goes to a spiritual level of praying and asking God for vision and direction. And I know that can sound very fairy or cliche in a sense, but for me, I think it's been important, because I've made vision boards that had absolutely nothing to do with my, the things I may be gifted in or the things I want. They're influenced by what I see from others. So I realized that actually I need to sink myself deeper. What is it that God wants for me, and how do I see those opportunities around me? So like you're saying, new year, new me. I'm more so what are the habits that I need to cultivate to become the person that God may be emphasizing that I need to be, So this year I'm looking at habits a close friend of mine. So we're praying together and we're kind of sharing scriptures throughout our fasting, because we have a Daniel fast at church. And one of the words that came up was preparation, and it's something they also shared at church, how important it is to prepare. And I remember she broke it down into the most little things, preparing to go to work, getting ready the day before, making your lunch, ironing your clothes, things like that, just being prepared, cultivating that habit and practice of being prepared, and how much that sets you up for succeeding. And it gives you confidence in yourself. You can bet on yourself to show up, for you every day. So I think that's one of the things that are up there. How do I better prepare? How do I strengthen the small things? Because for someone who's goal-orientated, sometimes the steps to reaching that goal can be easily overlooked. And that's something I'm working on, to not overlook the small things, start with the small things, and then I'll get to the goal as soon as I master the small. So that's where I am with that.
No, that's absolutely brilliant. And I think, like you said, happy belated birthday. I know your birthday was was it yesterday, a couple of days ago, something like that.
Ago.
Yeah, so happy belated birthday. And I wanted to say that I think as you grow up, with age comes wisdom. And it's really great that, like you said, that after your birthday, you had a lot of time to really look at how you are wanting to achieve your goals. And I love how for you, you said that, you're a Christian and you're putting the spiritual aspect of it, which I also firmly believe, because that's something that I've also been very intentional in doing. And I think habits, sometimes we do kind of miss that step, that we might have these wonderful resolutions and big goals, and then we get mad that we don't achieve them, but we just don't look at them at the beginning level. How am I going to get there? What type of person do I need to be? There's this book that I love. I don't know if you've read it, or I'm sure somebody else who's listening might have read it. It's by James Clear, called Atomic Habits. Yes, brilliant book. And he also just breaks down that whole idea of how you have to identify your habits, identify the identity that you want to be at. So if you want to be a person who is who exercises a lot. You have to do those little habits in the morning, or a person who looks good, who because I'm bringing in the whole weight thing, because it's a new year and we're all trying to lose weight and whatever, or get into a new training regime. Yeah. So that's obviously the most basic one, but it's like, what habits do you do that can help you to be that type of person, And I think it's very, very clear that it's very good that you've actually instilled that into your path and your goals or your visions for the year. And I wish you all of the best with everything you intend to do. Really exciting. Really, really exciting. Since we're talking about the beginning and it's a new year, let's go back to your beginning, right? Let's understand your journey, right? I wanted to ask you, what are some of the influences that led you into your academic career? Was it something that you always knew, like, hey, this is what I'm going to do? Or was it something that kind of just happened? Like, what is the root of your science?
I think, funny enough, for me, I think it's okay, like when you grow up in your childhood's academic, usually you just go to school and then you do well. Like there's nothing to it. And then as you grow, I think it's something my parents saw for me and my teachers, like the community around me being like, okay, oh, maybe she could be a doctor, or maybe she could be a scientist, things like that. And I think it's more so, it was primarily that in the beginning. And then as I grew older, I remember like growing up, my parents used to always say, like to this day, they always say education is the key. Like education will open doors for you and give you independence. And I strongly believe in that because my parents are practical examples for that. Both my parents are the last borns in their families, and they're actually the first generation of graduates. And for example, like my dad, I remember I hope I'm telling the story correctly in case he listens to this. So I think he didn't pass grade 8 and he dropped out. And then because I think it was a fallout with the teacher, like back in the day, you could just, and he dropped out and he continued his studies like at home and went to write exams and like literally took himself through high school and didn't give up because my granddad strongly believed in education. So he basically forced him to finish because he was ready to like throw in the towel. And then after that, he became a security guard. And while he was a security guard at Unitrans, he was studying at the University of Vaal, which is basically UJ now. So he did that while he was a security guard. It became a transport manager after that. So I think just looking at their lives, and my mom was a policewoman and went on to be in the IT field within the South African Police Services and all of that. So the backstory of that, they come from very like humble beginnings, being the first, being the first in their families. Growing up, my parents took in some of my cousins who are older than me, and who are now engineers who are having like a good life. They took them in, helped them with school, like they did different things to support family members, and that was all through education. The blessing of them being able to continue. So every time they tell us that me and my siblings that education is the key, it's something for them that's very personal. It's something that they have seen within their own lives. And even my extended family, I think when people look on the outside, they look at, oh, wow, like nice home, or they just look at the material things. But the backstory of that is we were that family, that family to, oh, shame, maybe we need to give them some food, like that family that everyone sympathizes with back in the day. And I'm not talking about, I know poverty is relative, but I do think that it was bad. Like when I hear it, I'm just like, whoa, guys, how did we survive that? So that's why I believe in education. So that's where my passion comes from. And also me being in the academic field, I think I was just driven by that. Even my parents saying, there's nothing you can't achieve. Like every time I look at, oh, why can't I, if an opportunity comes, why can't I do that? Like, because I know the more you push the boundary, the better it is for the next person. So I think for me, what pushes me the most is that I also want to be an example, just like my aunts are examples who are doctors, my uncle's an engineer. I also want to look back and someone to look back in my family and say, oh, but Nkosi is that, so that's achievable, So more than actually being passionate about the field, it's also for me personally, I want to be a very practical, in the neighborhood example of someone who did it, so you can do it too. Yeah.
Oh my goodness, Nkosi, that's
I hope I didn't just go
I'm like,
on and
I
on.
had goosebumps listening to that story. And like you said, that I think for you, because your parents are such practical examples, I think sometimes when people hear that saying, it sounds very far-fetched. And I almost say that, especially with, I don't want to say our generation, but and I say this with all due respect, the TikTok generation, where it's very like, you don't need school. School's not that important, But when you look back at our parents or our grandparents, and even some people in our generation now, the fact that for them, school literally, rather, let me say education, it took them to a whole completely, the better life. And it's so sad that now our, and I say this again respectfully, TikTok generation, it's like, why do you need it? You can just you can drop out of school, you can just become a content what, and not saying that you can't, but I think we really forget the importance of education and how it really is the key. And especially to a lot of people of color, Black people, Africans, like it's like the key to how you and I, for example, are living the life that our parents only dreamed to have lived. And that's because of education. Yeah. And I know for me with my parents, it's also very personal for them. They always remind, like my dad as well, always reminds me that, and education is the key. And sometimes, hearing that, like, especially when like school is really thrashing you, you're like, no, dude, I don't want to do it. I quit. But it's like how your dad, his grandfather forced him to continue. And there are moments where I'm like, I'm so glad my parents forced me to stay in this, because look at me now, So speaking of you and your parents, you having that academic, that whole somebody to look up to in your academic field. Talk us through your academic journey. Like, how did you get into the space, speaking from high school? And because I know this is always the question that I always go like, did you always know that this actually existed? So talk us through on how you came to identify into the space that you are in right now.
Yeah. So I actually didn't know my degree existed at all. Like, even geography for me, it's something I fell upon in high school, grade 10. I didn't even know I was good at geography. But then in grade 10, 11, 12, I was that geography kid. Like, and I had an amazing teacher. Like, our teacher was the type of teacher that you want every child to have. Just so supportive of every student, no matter how their marks are, just very supportive. So in high school, throughout school, one thing I was sure of is that I'm creative. I was that extra child in class, science projects, cover pages on point, If it's that 5 marks for creativity, I'm there. I'll get it. So I knew that I enjoy being creative and creating stuff, whatever it is. So after high school, I actually spoke to my parents that I wanted to go to design school because I can draw as well. So more so of fashion. And my dad just said, he knew that that's something I'd want to do, but he gave me advice and said, it's not the type of industry. People who didn't go study fashion are actually successful in that type of field. So it's better to actually, how the same advice we all get. First study something that's going to get you the job and then finance your dreams. Yes. So that's what it is.
Did we all have the same parents, guys? Like,
I feel like we did. It's so funny. We need a support group. So he gave me that advice, and I was like, he's right, because I don't want to struggle. I don't want to be a struggling fashion designer. So when I was in matric, I applied for this degree when I saw it in the CAO book because I just felt like, okay, I'm good at geography. I enjoy geography. So let's see where this can take me. Because initially I had told my parents from grade 10 to 12 just to aim for a goal and have at least good marks. I was like, no, guys, I want to be a doctor. Okay. I want to be a doctor. I want to be a doctor without borders. I wanted to be in the wards and just helping people. That's what I wanted to do.
Yeah, I hear you.
And my parents actually bought into that vision. So after matric, my dad is like, he was determined. He was like, okay, Nkosi, because I even put it in the CAO and the program was full, and they suggested that I do pharmacy and then cross over as the years go by. And I was like, nah. I don't want to do that. And then my dad suggested Cuba. And I was like, no, I'm not going to Cuba. And I knew it was something I'm not passionate about. Like, I like helping people, but I don't know, like being a doctor was not in the books. I just had to aim for something because I didn't know. And that's actually the reason why I started ReEnvisage, the NPO, because I didn't have enough information on the careers available. Even for the environmental degree that I did, there was not enough information for me to plan ahead, prepare myself, or I don't know of any organizations that could offer me internships. Like I had limited information and I went to a good school, and people would expect like a school that's multiracial or a school that is, like what you call a Model C school. People would expect that those type of students would have enough information to make informed decisions about the degree or what they want to further their studies in. And unfortunately, that wasn't the case for me. And I think for many others at the time. But that's how I came upon my degree. And I enjoyed it. It was hard, but I enjoyed it. And now looking back, as someone who like retreats, like I love nature. I didn't know that about myself. So looking back, it makes sense. Because even the internship I was involved in for like 3 years, they exposed us to different activities like hiking, things I had never explored before that. Like Black person and hiking, guys. I know it's still like a topic that most people are like, nah, no. Hiking.
Listen, I am most people. I fight my friends. Don't invite me. I don't even want to hear about it. Why are we walking so far?
Where are we going?
Where are we going?
Yeah. So I think all of that has kind of like made the dots connect. And I realized, okay, this is the field I'm supposed to be in. And I enjoy it. I love nature. I enjoy nature, and I'm a very curious person. So I always had the fascination about clouds, why they look like they do, or what forms them. So the processes behind how nature operates, I enjoy that. I like that. I like to know the why behind why things happen. So that's how I came about that degree.
So you mentioned that you started an NPO, which is a non-profit organization. And like you say, that you're very passionate about education and you put this passion into purpose. And you started this NPO called
ReEnvisage,
which is to imagine a better future that aims to capacitate young people with information and skills to better adapt and transition from high school to varsity and then to the workplace. So can you tell us more about this project and what you aim to do with it in the future? Yeah.
So as you say, and it's fairly new, although I registered it, I think a year ago. I just put it on pause because I couldn't completely. I think for someone who has asked questions from people who actually run NPOs, and one of them was actually Ndoni, because the late Ndoni, I ran it past and I was like, this is what I want to do. What do you think? And all of that. And she did say how much time it takes. So I created a social media presence on Instagram, and I was like, okay, I'm going to put it on pause until I finish my master's and then go into that thereafter, which will be soon. So ReEnvisage basically is, just like you said, for me, it's a gap filler between the information a student needs in high school, that is from grade 10 to 12, to varsity? What information do I need to make an informed decision about my career? And for me, it also, I'm drawing from my personal experience of what did I need? Who did I want to ask? Like, what type of person did I need to ask during that period? And I think even for my cousins who asked me questions about things like app points, what do they mean? What does the point system mean? You'd be surprised how many kids still don't know what that means. How seeing a CAO or filling in a CAO, especially now that it's online, how daunting it can be. Whether you come from a privileged or non-privileged background, if you're not exposed to those type of things, it can still be something that may be daunting and you may need guidance in. So basically, what I hope to do with the organization is to be someone who's on the ground with a team of people. Currently, it's 2 of us, and we're still yet to meet and discuss the way forward. But it's to be people on the ground who go out to schools and give kids this information. And luckily, a lot of young people today, whether you are from the rural area or suburban areas, almost all young people are on TikTok or on Instagram or on digital platforms. So I think it's the perfect place to share information. And that's how I want to reach out, both in person and on social media and through interacting with different, because I think the network that I already have, the network you already have as a young professional, as a young person or student, the people you're around as a student, already a valuable network for you. So for me, my hope is to get the people around me who are in different careers to adopt, like mentor someone, share information. And I know mentor can sound like you're just giving of all your time to someone, but it can be as simple as giving them advice or offering to put in a good word for them for whatever vacation job they may need, things like that. And even for me, I think when I was in my internship, I didn't realize the importance of volunteering. I think a friend of mine, when I started in my internship, he was straight out of matric and he was volunteering. And that's how he got into the internship without even having a degree, the power of just volunteering. And I think most young people underestimate that, the importance of volunteering and exposing yourself into the workplace you want to be in. So basically, that's what I hope to achieve with the organization, to just have a footprint on the ground and for students to know that this is a place I can come to get information. This is a place I can come to ask for advice and get direction for where I want to go. Yeah.
No, this is so important. Like you said, it would be a very valuable gap filler. And I hope when you finish with your studies, you can like really you can put your oar into that, because it's something very, very important. And because we're moving into such a digital age, this is something that somebody can literally just look up and have all that information ready and available to them. So wishing you all of the best for such important and very purposeful work that you're doing. And I think because it's very purposeful and it's bigger than just it being about you. God has got a great way of making those types of projects work. So I think it's really going to be pretty brilliant. Okay, so now let's talk about you and your studies. So you are a master's student in environmental and sustainable education, and the research focuses on upscaling community-based water quality management in South Africa through social learning. Can you tell us more about this research and why is it so important that you're doing this work?
So basically, my research, like you said, focuses on community-based water quality management, which is basically can simply be defined as a group of people in a particular community coming together to address a common water quality problem. And what I'm looking at within my research is a water quality problem that is influenced by things like leaking sewers, or illegal dumping or litter pollution along the rivers. So I'm looking at how the practice of community-based water quality management is helping to improve water quality and also to address water quality challenges in communities. So in Pietermaritzburg, closely linked to this research of mine is an organization called DACT, which is based in Pietermaritzburg, which I mentioned earlier is where I did my internship. So within that organization, I worked with teams who basically do this work of community-based water quality management, who are funded by the government. It could be the Department of Water and Sanitation or Umgeni Municipality, which is local for Pietermaritzburg. And they basically do this work using different types of tools, but mainly citizen science tools, which are basically tools that can be used by non-scientists to monitor and manage water quality. And so what my research looks at is 2 case studies, 2 projects that are under DACT, and looking at how can we better support, how can the government better support, how can the private sector, how can we better support these projects in order for them to be, because the current challenge is that they have funding, but it's not sustainable. How can they be better supported financially through resources, through partnerships by national government, international, local government to continue the work they're doing. And a big component of that is social learning. So these type of projects actually also have different capacity building activities. For example, the participants in these type of projects can get opportunities of improving maybe their scientific literacy or learning new skills like using the citizen science tools, or get the opportunity of attending trainings. So through that and through the work they do of community-based water quality management, they end up having kind of like I don't know how to call it, but like you would be in a class where there's a teacher, you have a common subject, maybe EMS or science, you're learning it together. So eventually, because of the way you interact, the common practices you share, you eventually have social learning, which is basically like because I'm social science, I'm in the social science field. It's like it can be like almost like a social construct, but it's a concept that basically means that we are all learning and we are all changing in a way. Like we're developing a sense of personal agency. That means that if I see a paper on the floor or I see a paper outside, I'll pick up that paper because I'm already involved in the practice of community-based water quality management. So that has influenced the way I interact with the environment. So that's what it's about, and looking at how can we better support this practice in order for that outcome of social learning to happen, so that eventually people can just have that consciousness of the environment is important, water is important, so I should protect it. So yeah, that's what it's about. Yeah, and for people in the social sciences field, I think they'll understand. Sometimes it's hard to explain these concepts because they can be so abstract in a way, unlike science that is just like almost tangible. For social, it can be intangible, but it's the things that influence the way, like influence people's behaviors. So that's what we're also looking at. An element of my research is social learning in that aspect. Yeah.
All right. So Nkosi, that sounds very interesting. And I liked what you said about the whole idea of social learning can seem very complex. But I think because we're moving in this era of science or just academia as a whole, where we're doing a lot of multidisciplinary working or transdisciplinary working, where social scientists have to work with scientists who are doing more of the quantitative work. So these types of terms, we kind of have to learn together and learn with each other. And I know I had a moment where I had to work with a social scientist, and I will not lie, it showed me flames because like there was a lot of terms that I didn't understand, and it required a lot of thought process. But I think, this type of science where you're engaging with community and we're engaging with, you engage with various different stakeholders, like you said, that you're working with the various governments. This type of research and your type of research is so important. important, because I think sometimes as scientists, we just come in and we say, do this. But I think with the implementation of social scientists, for example, where we hold hands and, I think what you said about the sustainability, where there are funds there, but how can we sustain these types of projects? So it sounds very, very exciting. And I like how it I'm sure it gave you very on the job learning experience, because some of these things were very theoretical, and I think with that internship that you did, you were able to have more like hands-on experience, and that is obviously very valuable, right?
Definitely. And I think, like you're saying, and I'm not sure about the core science degrees or research, but for this, I got all of my data from those two teams through interviews and mainly through interviews and looking at other reports that were written within the organization I worked with at the time. That is what informed my research. So like you're saying, it's a big advantage to do research within an organization you're working in and within people who you work with, because they trust you even during those interviews. They trust you to share information. And also for the social scientists, there's a process of actually asking for permission to do interviews with them, to do interviews with a particular organization. They have to sign consent forms, gatekeepers letters. So all of that has been an easy process for me, because these are people I know who are easily accessible as well and can give me that information very quickly. Because for my honors, it was just a long process. Like the ethical clearance, which is basically a process you do to ask for permission to do research with an organization. It took months. And I think it was because I didn't have a relationship with those. I didn't even know the organization at the time. And it took months. I ended up having to do my research without it, because it just delayed me. So I think it's a big advantage if you can do research with a particular organization, or link yourself up to first maybe volunteer or work there and develop relationships to do that, because it does work
definitely
well.
But I think, like you said, these are the types of things that having somebody who's walked this path, somebody would have been able to tell you. And then this shows again why it's so important for that NPO that you're doing, where you can have somebody walk you through that process. Like, this is how you meant to do it. Because I think sometimes we go in blind. We're like, oh, I'm doing a master's, or I'm doing this research. And then it's like, oh, snap. There's this wonderful saying where a friend of mine told me that, it's the best part of doing a degree is saying you're doing a degree. The hardest part is actually doing the degree. It's so easy to say, like, oh, I'm doing this degree. That's so easy to say, but the hard part is actually doing the degree. So go ahead.
I think the worst part is when someone says, like, maybe saying, because people just attach being a postgrad as something so big, and you're saying, no, I'm doing my master's, and they're like, oh wow, and at the back of your head you're thinking,
exactly,
you don't know
and it's true. As we're about to wrap up, we've spoken a lot about your own life journey and your faith and etc. So you, given your own experiences that you've experienced, you started an Instagram called Candid Conversations during lockdown, where you engage candidly with various guests on their faith, mental health, and life journey from a perspective of being a young person, so no one feels alone in whatever they're doing or whatever they're going through. This is so important. Kudos on that. So I wanted to ask you, in these past couple of years of doing this, what have you learned from that, and how has that helped you, not only in your own academic journey, but I think in your own personal capacity?
So basically, Candid has helped me to gain more courage in approaching people, because I have to approach people and ask to do interviews with them or lives with them on Instagram. And it also helped me realize, I think most of my friends, I'm saying most as if I have 50 friends, but my close friends helped me realize that it's something I do. Like, although I'm an introverted person who's also an extrovert, the extroverted side of me enjoys engaging in conversation with people. So understanding like where they come from, or I just love talking and learning who the person is, where they're from, like learning from them. And this is something that in conversations I've had with friends, just anyone in conversations I've had, I've realized that actually I'm also going through the same thing that this person's going through. So how many people who are as young as me, who are going through the same thing? For example, I think a few months ago, even last year, I was just going through this thing of trying to acknowledge that my parents are growing older. I don't know. It was such a weird thing for me to understand that, okay, this is where I am right now. I'm growing older. My parents are growing older. I think when you see maybe your parents have arthritis, develop arthritis, it's something that you are not like, it's something that your mind has to kind of take on. You know, it's not normal in a sense. I know it is normal for others, but as a young person, I don't know, like we have this construct of who your parents are. Even the idea of your parents are your parents, but they're also human beings. Like, do you know them as people versus do you know them as a parent? Yeah. So all of those things, all of the questions I've had and things I've been through and other conversations with other people basically created kind of conversations. Why can't we have conversations on this platform where other people can also glean from and say, oh, actually, I also go through that. So I'm not alone, because most of the time you can feel that you're alone in whatever you go through. You can feel that you're alone maybe in feeling like you're a failure. You can feel that you're alone in like small things, like nothing's coming to mind right now. But I think we've all been at that place where you just feel like, it's just me, you know, I suck. But no, sometimes it's nice to hear someone else say, oh, I suck at that too, you know? I suck at that. And you need that. So it's really helped me to, just from the conversations I've had with people I don't know personally, reaching out to them, all of that has developed the courage in me to say, okay, Nkosi, you can do it. You don't have to be afraid to approach people. And that's the same advice I gave to a friend of mine who's in Joburg, who started a new job and was just saying like the pressure, the work environment is hectic. And I was like, message someone on LinkedIn, like try, like people within your community, ask someone in the previous job you worked with who's older than you, has more experience, who's in the same field as you. Ask them to give you guidance, like literally having a conversation about what you're struggling with at work with someone who has been in a work environment for years can relieve you from so much stress. Like it can be such an outlet for you to gain perspective, to learn something new, to learn how to deal with a new work environment. And I wouldn't have given that advice if I hadn't, obviously myself, approach people I don't know on Instagram and be like, hey, I run this page called Khaled, and so on and so on. So I think it has given me a sense of courage that I can do anything, like whatever I desire to do or create, I can. I don't have to be afraid to do it. You can just start. And I think that's also the same courage that helped me start ReEnvisage. It was that same courage of saying, oh, this is a gap I see, how can I fill it? And just starting and not being afraid of what people would think or having self-doubts and not really trusting myself. So it has really helped me to also, on a career level, I remember I applied for a job that was in the environmental field, but they also wanted someone, it was very technical, but they also wanted someone who could do social media. And it's something so little, you know, like that line, someone who can manage social media, the skills I've learned of creating content, just creating like a poster, as simple as a poster, writing those paragraphs like within that post you're doing, like how to basically putting it all together. It's skills that are so small but are so valuable, you know. And even in my previous workplace, I actually started a podcast there because it's something that I know how to do, because I started a podcast for Kind of Conversations as well. It's something that I'm familiar with. So it has helped me diversify myself in my career and say, okay, I can also do this. If you need someone to do this, I'm up for the job. And that job I applied for, shortlisted in, and it was an international job. And I honestly think it was because of the diversity my CV had, saying, okay, I do this, I do that, academic, but I also do this on the side. since you're also saying you want this type of skill, I can do this. I have something that you can go to online and see and be able to see that I can actually do that job. So it has really helped me to be confident in other areas when applying for a job. And also, I think you can attest to this, like developing questions, asking questions, engaging with people. It's such a skill that we all need, especially in the workplace, because you have to engage. It doesn't matter. You can be the hardest worker in the room. How do you engage with people?
Definitely.
How do you communicate? It's such an important thing. And I look at good communicators, even at work. I'm like, wow, I want to be that person. How do you do it? And I watch your Trevor Noahs, people who have that skill of asking a question. Well, how do people answer questions? Those are such important things to learn, and Candid has helped me kind of learn that in a way. Yeah.
Amazing. I can also relate to all of the things that you're saying. Like even doing this podcast, it has developed skills that you could have never learned in a workspace or in a research space, but which are so translatable to all of these areas of your life, and it actually makes you stand out. And I'm not saying that everybody should go and start an Instagram page or start a podcast, but I'm just saying that you don't realize how this thing that starts off as a hobby, it's I don't want to say it centers, but it really just feeds into your life and in very positive ways. And like what you said, it allows you to be more confident. It allows you to approach people. I know for myself, I call myself the DM queen. I will DM somebody. If I'm like, I want you on my show, I will send you a message. I'm not afraid, because I've learned that the thing, most people don't really say no. They either say not now. They'll either say yes, not now, or maybe let me translate, let me refer you to someone else. And then maybe the bottom answer is a no, but it's never really no, cut off, So I think it's one of those things that you learn that and what you said about how you also, when you're chatting to all these various people, you find similarities. Like I know for me, sometimes I'm chatting to somebody who is in another continent and doing something completely different, but they speak about something and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going through that. What? I can relate. And so it's really, really amazing. And and I'm sure that, it's only the beginning of so many more great things for you. And it's really, really exciting. So it makes me happy that you've also experienced those things, because it's something that I can relate to. But Nkosi, we've had such a lovely time chatting. I just wanted to say thank you so much for coming onto the show and speaking with me and just sharing about your journey and all of the things that you believe in. It's been really great.
Thank you, Anne. And I think you're doing I'm sure you've heard this before, job. I think for people who have seen you on campus or people who have seen you start, you're going to go bigger. And thank you for this platform and the information you share. I think it's very important, and it feeds into the gaps that I was speaking about, how important it is to have that information. So keep going on, keep going strong, and I hope you just take over more territories this year through your podcast.
Amen, girl. Thank you so much. And I look forward for my invitation on those candid conversations. You see, this is me just this is me just featuring myself without, that's how I do it. And now you have the pressure that so many people are listening to this, so I have to somehow end up with that conversation.
Thankfully now I have ReEnvisage and Candid, so you're gonna be in the mix.
Awesome. No, thank you so much, Nkosi. It was amazing, and thank you for the kind words. I really, really appreciate it. And to everybody else who's tuned in today, thank you so much for tuning into another episode of the Root of the Suns podcast with your girl Anne with an E. Until next time, goodbye.